My hands stable, I feel able to turn the tables, I could do this. Just keep moving, keep your hands up, stupid. I feel lucid, a new viewing. I can see the end, I can see my future, I can view it. It's right there for the taking. Everything I've ever wanted, dreams are just waiting. I just gotta fight for it, willing to die for it, willing to like sort of.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000, it still sucks. This is Philip J. Price, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show, your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. Hey everybody, what's going on? So we're starting the show here. Daniel will be on in a minute. He's having the hiccups.
He has some technical difficulties with this acid reflux, right?
Yeah, I think it's that. I don't know. Acid reflux or hiccups.
Yeah, I tried to scare him. I just yelled in the microphone, but that didn't work.
Yeah. I raised my t-shirt up and he just laughed. He didn't get scared. So
good. I got a little remedy right here. That's why it was off screen. Somebody put it in the live chat. Hopefully it wasn't a trick. And this is something to give me more hiccups.
Is the uncured for hiccups?
You know, I think they actually went away. Don't
jinx it. Don't jinx it.
Yeah.
Not bad.
There you
was
go.
it a typod? Was it a typod?
It was sugar and water. But I think they went away right before. Yeah, I'm a gamer, you know, once it hits in, once the game hits, that's what time I come in, you know what I mean?
Oh, you know, like sugar and water gives you there. Yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens. All right, guys. Well, welcome everybody to the Drunk Turkey Show. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Big Blue and Jaime. And it does seem and appear that the hiccups are finally gone, as last couple of times it would have happened like 5 times by now, right? Yeah. So it seems to have gone away. Good deal. Today, though, is was the anniversary of a very sad day. You know, 1 year ago today, there was a quadruple homicide, and Kaylee Goncalves, Maddie Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, their lives were taken, and it was a senseless act. It was an act of cowardness, of somebody going into a home while people were asleep and felt safe inside their home, and committed a crime with such veracity and ill will and no remorse. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start today with a moment of silence for those that, you know, for the 4 victims and their family members who are going through a tough time. You know, I spoke with Christy yesterday, and they're doing all right, but it's been a rough couple of days. So let's have a moment of silence for them. And thank you, guys. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the case. We're going to reflect over the last year. What is true? What is false? Just simply what are the facts of the case, right? And we'll start off in the beginning. There was a phone call or a 911 call made at around noon, and it was referencing an unconscious person. Once officers arrived there and arrived to the scene, that it was obvious that it wasn't the situation. Now, we have learned since that a couple of the, that one of the rooms was locked up or blocked. The door was blocked and nobody could enter in. And we know that once somebody was able to enter into into that room, which was Ethan's best friend, he was able to see what he saw, and then he called 911. Based on what we heard from the beginning, I'll ask you this, Jaime. do you think, because the 911 tape hasn't been released yet, the information most likely is already out there? You know, that one of the bodies was blocking the door, and that who it was that found and why they were called and when they were called. Why do you think that the 911 call is still under gag?
The only thing I can think of is probably the fact that they're still trying to just keep the gag order legit. You know what I mean? Like the person who called in or who actually called in maybe handed off the phone to someone else. You know?
Yeah.
It could be that, or it could be. And it could be, I don't know if because like in any other crimes like that one, they usually, that's the 911 call is usually the first thing that comes out, right?
Yeah, that's. I don't recall a case where there was a 911 phone call that occurred and it was being hidden for so long. You know, Big Blue, what do you think? What do you? Why do you think it still hasn't been released to this day?
I honestly, I don't know why they haven't released it yet. Maybe I'm not sure if there's like something with having to do with the state and having to go to court first before they release it with the privacy thing, or it's just that maybe that they're protecting a witness. They say their name in there, but they can always beep out the witness's voice or name. They say this is night calling. So I don't know.
Yeah. Canadian True Crime Buff comes in with a $50 super chat. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. She says, have a great live tonight. You guys are the best. DTS has the best chat, and all the mods are awesome people. Can't be here tonight, but have left my DNA. Much love to y'all. Thank you. Much love to yourself as well. Please, if you guys haven't already, hit that like button. We'd appreciate it. So, and just real quick, Big Blue, to answer your question, I think it's coming in on your end, because when I go back and listen to it, I don't hear anything. It comes in pretty clear on my side.
I hear Blue perfectly good.
No, he said that it was my voice.
I don't know. It sounds choppy on your side.
That's what I'm saying. When I go back and listen to it, mine doesn't sound that bad. Let me know in the live chat if my audio is coming in kind of weird.
Yeah, because somebody put it in there. Right there.
All right. Well, no, it just sounds good now. All right. Let me know if it acts up again, and then I'll pull myself out and fix it real quick. All right. People are saying that it is. I'm gonna pull myself out.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah, one thing. Go ahead.
I see Angel D is in here. I wonder if she, saw the little short we made. That was when, what's it called? Danny was saying things of that nature. And then you with your, was it butter sausage?
A little bit of honey on my lips.
Yeah, right. You sound good, man. Like the audio on your side is good. I don't know if it's good on my side.
Yeah, your audio is good.
Yeah, you two guys sound good to me. What about me? Does it sound all right?
That's better. Yeah, now it is.
All right. Yeah, I just unplugged everything, restarted it, and got it going again. So yeah, the 911 call hasn't been released. I find it a little bit weird, but then again, maybe perhaps there was an intention for it to be released. However, after the arrest of Bryan Kohberger, maybe perhaps they felt that it was better to just kind of keep it under gag order. The only other thing I can think of is that maybe perhaps. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, to be honest with you.
I mean, even with the gag order, a lot of stuff came out, Yeah. A lot of information did come out with the gag order. So,
you guys think that the 911 call is going to be part of the court hearing?
I'm sure it will.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, because the defense is going to want to try to use it for some reason that they at the time that they called and try to get like the time of death and everything, or even the prosecution would use it to say they were called this many hours after the deceased passed.
Yeah, especially like in the 911 call, if you can hear a lot of people, they can use that and say, "Oh, look how many people were here that was contaminating the scene." You know what I mean? They can use it like that too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that information's eventually going to come out regardless, especially if they do bring it up in court. I was just kind of wondering or thinking out loud. I mean, I know the defense is going to want to use it, and the defense is going to want to use the 8-hour window as some sort of indication that there was something else that had occurred, right? That's the biggest issue with this, right? It's that 8-hour window. She was in frozen shock phase, Dylan, that is, but she couldn't call 911, yet she or somebody else in the house, whether it was her or Bethany, were able to call Ethan's best friend and not call 911, right? So those, let's be honest, those things don't line up, right? Those dots don't connect. Now, I know the defense is going to want to use that. I don't know how, even though, she may have acted in the way she had, if there's no other dots connecting her to the murder, that, you know what I mean? There's still no dots that connect her directly to the murder. And the reason being is because, and this is one of the things, I know that a lot of folks thought that there was possible drugs or something like that affiliated with this case. And the thing that I'm saying is that all 4 victims had their phone there and they were forensically downloaded. Bethany and Dylan's phones were forensically downloaded. Jack DeCore's phone was forensically downloaded and gone through by the police department. I feel that if there was something there, it would have been found, right? And what's the theory that why Bryan Kohberger? Why him? He's a fall guy, and why do they need a fall guy? Because of pressure of the University of Idaho, right? That's the theory. Well, if that's true, and I'll ask you this guys, if that's true, don't you think that if the appropriate, and I'll put that in quotation marks, the appropriate killer, okay, if the appropriate or the real killer were to have presented themselves, or evidence would have presented itself, wouldn't they have arrested that guy or girl?
Oh yeah. I think going down that route, I mean, in the beginning, all the routes pretty much open. All the theories were, good to go. At one point, but then slowly some of the evidence and information started coming out. Then you started, not paying attention to those kind of, theories, and then you start knowing that, the pings and all that on his phone. So like it makes it just feel like it was like the process of elimination is just takes you to that certain point where you finally think, oh, okay, this might be the guy. They all fits towards this person.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, even though with the gag order, there was still plenty of information with the court records to be able to identify like certain, why they thought it's him. So I've seen other cases where, I mean, at the time,
but what I'm saying is like what I'm doing is I want to, I guess, attack the theory at its core, right? The theory at the core is that there was pressure from the University of Idaho, right? Because of money. That's what the theory is. Money. The University of Idaho is losing money, so they put pressure on the Moscow Police Department. First, I don't think the FBI cares about the pressure that's being put on Moscow Police Department. That's a federal agency. And, that doesn't make any sense. So the thing is, if they were willing to set up somebody just so they can alleviate the pressure, then that tells me that if the appropriate or the person they thought was the real killer had the information or evidence presented itself earlier on in the investigation, then they would have arrested the appropriate person, because the objective is still completed. It's the same thing, which is, solving the case before the end of the semester. I think that was what the theory is. Now, what that tells me is it's still going out. Let me mute myself real quick.
Yeah, I don't. Blue? Oh, is it me?
No, I haven't been muting mine just so I can make sure it's not me. Yeah, so I guess tonight, if since we're not able to attend the vigil, a lot of people are turning on their porch lights for those poor, beautiful souls. Yeah, I didn't even actually see if they were going to hold a vigil at the site or what they were going to do over there today.
This is crime sleuthing. Yeah, we'll pray for that as well. We hope she's all right. Blue, am I sounding better?
Yeah, you're sounding good.
All right. I tried doing the plugging this stuff from my mic and see if that works.
Yeah, that's a lot better.
All right, cool. So basically what I was saying is, if the goal was just to alleviate that pressure from the University of Idaho and to arrest somebody, just to arrest someone, then if the real person would have brought themselves to attention, right? Like, let's just say it was a drug dealer. If information would have came up early enough in the investigation, don't you think that they would have arrested that person so that they would, be under the pressure or scrutiny of the University of Idaho? And then you got to think, if it was a patsy thing and they were just trying to blame it on anybody, and it was, again, the same thing. The theory is because of pressure from the University of Idaho due to money, then why not blame Kopaka, the guy who, isn't alive anymore, who SWAT took his life, right? And because he was threatening his roommates, apparently, supposedly, allegedly. I don't know. I haven't looked into this case, but allegedly that's the report. So if that ends up being the situation, I just don't see where it connects. What do you think, Big Blue?
Yeah, I don't see any connections there with the school, like trying to force like the police to frame somebody. And I don't think with the information that we have, I don't think they did frame somebody. I was just
right. No,
trying to help
obviously.
Jaime with his audio because he's
All
having issues with his audio.
All right. No, I am not moving my feet around any cables. I don't know what's going on with it. It could be StreamYard, to be honest with you guys. StreamYard's been acting up here recently. So it could be that. No date set for trial right now. That's true. So we find out, to get back to everything that we know so far, we find out later that they're looking for a white Elantra. And initially what comes out is a 2011 to 2013 Elantra. What we know now is that they didn't get Bryan Kohberger's name from the IGG results until December 19th. That information that they wanted, a 2011 to 13 Hyundai Elantra, was on December 7th. So what that tells me, Blue, is, well, let me rephrase this. We know that, according to the probable cause, that the FBI investigator looked at the tapes in Washington State, Pullman, Washington, and from that tape, they were able to determine that the Elantra could have been 2011 to 16, and then they went back and looked at the other ones and also knew that it could have been 2011 to 16. What that all tells me is that they weren't, aware of Bryan Kohberger, who he was. I know there's been a lot of speculation out there saying that, cops knew who he was right away, or November 29th, they knew who he was. not necessarily the case, right? Because had they known who he was, they would. I think they would have included 2011 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. Thank you, Terry Blue, for your 199 super chat. We appreciate that. And
yeah, I agree. Because if they would have known it was like him at that time, they would have his year model car that he drives. So they would have had it. They would have updated it. Unless it was a tactic. I mean, like sometimes I hear that sometimes the police do tactics where like they might not put 100% of the right information out there because they know that the suspect is going to be the only one that knows that right information. So if they put it out there that we're looking for this year model, then somebody's going to start panic and run. So they were off a couple of years, and maybe he wasn't panicking. He's like, oh, they can't even guess my car right. That might be a tactic to use.
The thing is, if they knew who he was and they knew what car he was, right? Why ask the public to be on the lookout for the wrong car? Why ask the public to be on the lookout for a car anyways? If the theory is they didn't want to alert him that they were onto him, and so they decided to put out for a car that is a different generation. That doesn't make sense, because if they knew who he was, they had the information, then you watch him and you build a case on him and you dig into his past, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and perhaps you go and ask some neighbors and things like that about certain things, but you got to be discreet so it doesn't get back to him. And if the goal is to be discreet and him not to know that you're onto him, why put out that you're even aware of a vehicle? What do you think, Hannah?
I think that they had to.
I said, law enforcement had no idea. Like you said, if they knew, they would have known the exact model, his whereabouts. Shit, they would have probably known his license plate number by then.
Yeah. You know, and the thing is, if you go look at the probable cause affidavit, and you look at how they got the warrant for Kohberger's phone locations the night of the incident, it's not information that wasn't available November 29th, December 10th. All of that information was available well before then. What they used was information that was public, right? And they also used his phone number and from a citation that they had, and corroborated that with or compared that with the list of phone numbers that were or were not connected to the tower near the King Road residence. And when they saw that it didn't connect, they probably could see when, you know, that his phone turned off at a certain point that it was connected and then it dropped off. And that doesn't necessarily mean that their phone is off. That just could mean that they've left a different area and they're no longer in service of that one tower, right? So you have that information, you have the schooling information, you have the Reddit information. All those things were what were used to get his warrant. All those things were ready and available prior to December 19th.
Yeah.
And yet they waited till then.
One thing I do want to say is they probably were putting out the car because they were still trying to get footage, you know, feedback from the public to see where he went and where he drove through.
Mm-hmm. And Tom comes in with a $5 super chat. Says, I agree they wanted to watch his movements after releasing a vehicle make and model. They give the right year, he might himself. They want justice. I mean, I think the fact that it's a white Ford sedan, that Hyundai Elantra, I mean, you can say that it's 2011 to 13, but when you go and actually look at the differences between the 11 and 13, they're so minor. It's very difficult to tell, especially like at night and whatnot. So I think that that there's no way that they knew who he was early on. Plus, the use of the FBI utilizing the IGG. The state's own paperwork states that by policy, the FBI cannot use their resources to conduct an IGG workup unless there is no suspects and all law enforcement tactics have been exhausted. So, meaning the only way they can use that or utilize that is if they have no idea who the guy is.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, I think for if they were giving out the wrong information to not alert him, can you imagine all the tips that they would have got? You know what I mean? I mean, they already got so many people calling in that they couldn't keep up, and for them to do it on purpose to not alert the suspect, I think it just doesn't make sense. I think they would want the most what's it called? Most the biggest lead instead of just getting random people reporting like random cars.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that just kind of tells you that they didn't have anything then. You know, thank you, Sissy, for your 9-month membership. Wow, thank you. That's awesome. Everyone hit that like and subscribe. We appreciate that. You know, and the other thing is, if police suspected this guy of being a quadruple homicide, you know, murderer, and he is a danger to society, he's already killed 4 people, you're going to want to get him off the streets pretty quick, regardless of who he is, whether he's a PhD student or an ex-con. You know, just based on the nature of the most recent crime, you're going to want to get him off the street as soon as possible. You know, and they built a case pretty quick against him. If December 19th, which does make sense, was the day that they got his information, and that's when they started to build this case. The 23rd is when they applied for and were granted the phone ping warrant or the phone location warrant, and the 27th is when they did the trash pool at his parents' house for the DNA match. So all that stuff happened after December 19th. So I just think that they didn't know. They had no idea. And I think that they weren't really aware of it being a 2013 to 2016 until after Kohberger's arrest. That's my thoughts. And I think that's going to be a hurdle for the prosecution.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you think that what do you think is a good defense for the prosecution for not changing it or for putting down the wrong year?
Well, I think it's going to be like a snowball effect. I think they're going to go from the beginning of the case, how, you know, we saw officers in the house from, you know, not in gear to the year of the car, and just make it seem like the law enforcement and, you know, the agencies weren't they weren't able to take care of all the evidence and like, how can I explain it? I'm having a hard time thinking right now. Like processing everything without them contaminating and making sure that everything's in its place. They're gonna bring that through the whole court system. That way they can make it seem like the agencies are incompetent.
Right. Yeah, and that's what they've been trying to do. That's why they've been asking for instance, background and training. They're trying to find something that's going to slip them up. What are your thoughts, Big Blue?
Yeah, I think the same thing. They're gonna attack it from like Jaime said from the beginning. You know, the way they collected the evidence, the way they conducted the search of the house, the way they, you know, we looked at the case already where they were looking at the Brady Giglio cases against the 2 officers. So they're, you know, they're trying to find something minute. It might, you know, to me, it might not be enough to dismiss the case, but maybe to put a little bit of like questionability into the jury's thought process. You know, you know, could they cross contaminate the sleeve? because they didn't, wear booties when they were walking to the house. But that's gonna be kind of hard because where the DNA was found is a really hard place to put somebody's DNA. And where did these people even meet Bryan Kohberger to get his DNA? You know what I mean? Like, so that's where all the theories go right out the window. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, all those theories. Yeah, I mean, if you put the thing is sometimes somebody will come up with a theory and they'll look at it from just that singular focus point. Like, for instance, if somebody says anything and it makes sense for that one part of the story, but not for the entire part, and they're just focusing in on that one part, right? Like, for instance, the drug deal. They're focusing in on, all right, it took them 8 hours to call police, so there must have been drugs, there must have been a cleanup, but they're not factoring in, all right, well, there would be evidence of drug use or drug sales or whatever the case may be, especially on their phone. These are 20, 21-year-olds who use their phone constantly, who are, probably making or setting up, deals, if that's in fact what they were doing. And police were able to forensically, not just police, but FBI were able to go through those phones. I just feel that there would have been evidence of that, right? And the only thing that would mean was that if drugs were involved and there was evidence of it, then that would mean that the police department were the ones that framed Bryan Kohberger to protect some drug dealers. And when you look at it from that angle, it doesn't make sense where, the FBI, who was investigating this, and from all indications, seem like they're the ones that really solved this case. You know what I mean? You don't think they're going to come across something as well, especially in an investigation like this, where so many eyes, so many checks and balances, so many departments are looking into it. And logically, do you think that, these officers or these FBI agents are going to say, I'm going to risk my freedom, my job, my career, my livelihood for some crooked cop in a small ass town that nobody had heard about prior to this incident? I mean, let's be real.
But
and it doesn't make sense.
I was gonna say, but how many times have we heard that the FBI steps in to help out and catch somebody when the local police can't, and they take over the case? I mean, this time they didn't. They left it for the local police department to take care of it, but they helped them out, which is also something that they do. I mean, they do it here in Texas all the time. When they can't find somebody, they get the Texas, Rangers into the mix to help out. And they don't get questioned about how they found the person or how their theories happen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why the big question is how the FBI, which is the FBI, they know a lot more about us than we want them to know. We would get that information.
Yeah, I think going with the framing Bryan, I think, I mean, first of all, you have to go through multiple agencies, right?
Yeah.
Which that's hard to do, even if you know people. But also, wouldn't it be easier to frame someone their age, someone that they knew, someone that they had contact with, instead of someone that was super, not super old, but older than them, a lot older than them, that they had no contact with them.
I was looking at our comment section. Somebody brought that up, and they said it's because Kohberger's from out of town. Yeah, I started laughing because I think the population was like 23,000, and only like 2,000 or 3,000 are locals. The rest is from out of town.
Yeah, that's a university.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, man. It like I said, it makes sense for the small, narrow picture frame. You make a 3-inch box, 3-inch window You look through that 3-inch window, and there's a 100-foot door there, and it makes sense for that 3-inch window. But when you take a step back and you look at the entire picture, it makes zero sense. You know what I mean? That's just what it is. Now, so Bryan Kohberger ends up getting arrested, right? He gets arrested. Why does he get arrested? There's the IGG that's what pointed at him. Now, the IGG that pointed at him isn't enough to like arrest him or anything. That's just saying, hey, go look at this guy. Now, the reason why it's not enough to arrest him is because the FBI and the IGG did not do a direct comparison from the DNA on the knife sheath to Bryan Kohberger's cheek or his DNA, or even to the DNA that was found on the in the trash that was ended up being his father's. Right? They're not comparing those things. They're only they got his DNA, they put it in a database and got a bunch of names of people who opted in to be a part of this ancestry thing, 23andMe, and then they pieced together information to come up with a possible suspect. None of this can be used in court, right? It's like a lie detector test. Can't be used in court. There's no guarantee that the person that the IGG is pointing at is in fact your suspect. So that's why you go and collect their DNA and match it directly, right? You don't, that's all you got to do is, all right, let's go and pull some trash. They pulled trash out at his parents' house because remember, if they found out December 19th, right, let's assume that's the day they found out Bryan Kohberger's name. Big Blue, where was Kohberger December 19th?
December 19th, I want to say he was already driving back, right?
No, he was already in the Pocono Mountains. He had left, I think it was December 13th. All right. So December 19th, they get his name. They go to his apartment or they try to watch him. He's not there. Right. So they run his license plate through license plate check readers, and they find out that he dropped through a plate reader in Colorado. And then they find out about these 2 stops in Indiana. So then with a little bit of research, it's probably not that hard. They probably figure out that he's headed back home. They pull the trash DNA or the trash, which is 100% legal and has zero to do with the IGG. There's some creators out there that are saying that the IGG that the FBI created pointed to Bryan Kohberger's father, and that's far from the truth. Right? I mean, you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with
it. So, I mean, I even had a conversation with the defense's own witness, Gabriela Vargas. All right. We were invited to the Truth and Transparency show, which is one of the channels that is more pro innocence when it comes to Bryan Kohberger. They had probable cause before the IGG. No, not necessarily. They didn't know who he was before the IGG. But just because you get information doesn't necessarily mean that's anything. Like for instance, Blue could tell me that I'm a horrible person and he does some sort of evil crime in his spare time. And does that give me, if I was a police officer, the right to go arrest him? Like, hey, knock on your door. Big Blue told me that you're doing horrible things late at night.
Yeah,
let's go.
You get Funko
Usually to myself.
I say you get Funko Pops off the back of trucks.
Right. You got to get evidence. And so, like the thing that I think is hilarious is funny, and I don't understand the logic behind it. To be 110% honest with you, Bryan Kohberger's defense team is wanting to introduce evidence that points to Bryan Kohberger's guilt that is not usable in court. That is equivalent to as if Bryan Kohberger took a lie detector test and failed it, which is not usable in court against him, and his own defense attorneys are fighting to have it put in. Like, I don't know about you guys, but in the words of my favorite commentator, Pepper Brooks, it's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it works.
The Ocho?
You know it. And that is a dodgeball reference if you guys are not aware of. Holly comes in with her membership for 6 months. Shine the light on for the victims. 100%. You know it. But why didn't they buccal swab his cheek first before pulling the trash? Well, buccal swabbing his cheek would require a warrant, which required evidence, right? And the trash doesn't require those things. You get the trash, then you can match it to either himself or a family member, and that gets you a warrant to do a lot of things, plus arrest him, and then to check his cheek. Now, once you do that, once you check the cheek and he passes, the DNA that was used that from the trash that matched his dad is irrelevant at that point, if that makes sense. There you go. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge the IGG. Man, apparently they're not dodging anything. But I like that. So what do you guys think about that tactic? I'm gonna start off with you first, Big Blue. What do you think about the tactic of putting in the IGG? Because here's the thing. The results of the IGG point at Bryan Kohberger. And the way you confirm those results is by testing Bryan Kohberger's DNA to the DNA on the sheath. If it comes back that it's a match, then that means that the work that they did on the IGG is correct. So it's only basically confirmation, right? What would you do, Blue? How is this a tactic in your opinion?
I mean, if it's not needed, and if I was a defense, I mean, of course I want to try to use it, because the way they're trying to use it is in a bad way. Oh, they use the family tree that's illegal, and this case is dismissed. That DNA is no good. But it wasn't the police department that did that. So that's why I think that the defense is trying to use it. But I think that with all the new laws and all the new steps that they're taking with IGG, things are changing. I think those laws are eventually going to go out the window, because they're solving so many cases with those kind of trees, with those kind of testing.
And that's the thing too. That's the thing too. The defense is assuming that, or the defense is saying that there's no precedent on IGG and work in Idaho, and that's true. However, there is in a lot of other states, and it's never worked out in the favor of the defense when it comes to the IGG. It has been acceptable and usable. But, I had in the comment section one time, somebody say, Daniel, is there a situation where something could happen that would make following the tip illegal? My answer is no. There's no situation that would keep police from, investigating somebody. Police can investigate somebody just to investigate them. They don't have to have a reason, to be honest with you. Now, they have to have a reason if they're going to pull warrants and things like that. But if they want to just say, hey, I think Blue's a shady guy, I'm going to go look into his public postings, public stuff, maybe just follow him a little bit and see if anything comes up. And if something comes up during the process of that, there's nothing wrong with it. But yeah, no. What do you guys think? And then I'll answer. Well, I'll give you the scenario that they said. They said that if somebody beats a person, and they get a statement from that person, and then they go and tell the police. How is that eligible for an investigation or not? Yeah.
No, I mean, if the person recognizes them and knows who it is, then that's common, police work. They use that tactic all the time.
No, not the police. If somebody random, like if Jaime finds out that his neighbor's up to no good, and he knows his neighbor's up to no good, so he goes out and tortures his neighbor until they admit of their wrongdoing. Jaime goes and calls the police. Do you think police could they lawfully investigate the neighbor at that point?
I mean, at that point, they would probably arrest Jaime. Torches. Maybe. But,
that's what I said.
But there is nosy neighbors, man. Like, I know a lot of neighbors that will call the police on each other for noise complaints or for just the way the people hanging out in the backyard, and it can lead to something if you're doing something wrong. So it can stick, but sometimes it falls bad on you because you call the police for no reason. There's no, they can give you a ticket for falsifying a crime or wasting the police's time.
Right. What about you, Jaime? What do you think? The scenario, you torture someone and you get a confession out of them. They're still alive. You go to the police department, tell them, hey, this person confessed to this crime. This is your guy. Does your actions make him uninvestigatable?
Well, first of all, you need evidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't just go out there and take it into your own hands. It's like vigilante kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, in that aspect, I'll probably be the one getting arrested. But
yeah,
I don't think they have any way of pursuing or trying to make an investigation unless by the time they get there, there's something, some kind of evidence that just shows that whatever he said was true. But I don't even know if that's even plausible.
Well,
legal.
Well, here's how it go down. Let's just say Big Blue is the officer, right? You go to Big Blue and you tell Big Blue, I tortured this guy, beat him down till he confessed to the homicide of a cold case. This is who your guy is. All right, Blue would go and probably hold you. Then they go make contact with the guy, make sure that what you're saying is true and you're not crazy and just saying you beat up somebody and there's really nobody there. Right. So they make contact with this person and then they say, all right, we're going to arrest Jaime for the assault. And Jaime would go to jail for said assault. And then the officer would go back to the victim and say, we've arrested him. Now, he claims that you were involved in this. Is there any truth to that? And if I want to go look into this person's background or Blue wants to look into that person's background as the officer, there's nothing illegal about that. Just because somebody else did something illegal to gather information. Now, the officer couldn't use that in court. When it comes down, like let's say this person gets arrested. The prosecution can't use, Jaime's statement or the confession that Jaime got out of the guy because it was done illegally. That doesn't change the police, because if that were the case, I could go commit a really bad crime and then tell Jaime to break into my house, find evidence of such crime, or tip off police after breaking into my house that it was me, right? And you get a criminal trespass, which is a class misdemeanor, and I get away with something horrendous. That's not how the justice system works. You know what I mean? Because that would be a tactic that anybody could use. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Tim Allen. Go ahead, Blue.
I said there's guidelines and stuff that the police have to follow, so for it to even like stick as a crime, there's
Right.
you know, I mean there is people that do investigate people and then they ended up turning into the police and building cases on people, which is true. It happens all the time with online predators. You know, they have a lot of those guys that lure them to a house and then they videotape them. You know, especially like news stations, not news stations, but you know, like Dateline and all those guys have their shows that do it. And that's pretty weird that you're luring them. I mean, it's not weird. You're trying to stop somebody from committing a crime. It's also weird that you're putting yourself in a really weird situation where it can go wrong. I mean, I'm pretty sure they have security, but still.
Well, it depends. I mean, if it's one of those, and it becomes a real tricky situation if it's one of those like just because I've seen some where they're just like YouTubers that are trying to catch predators. You know, more power to them. You know, predators need to be off the street, but you know, they set up things and lure the person into it. And sometimes if they're very amateur, they don't even notify police to be there. I've seen that's happening, and that's not good. That's you can find yourself getting into some real trouble or hurt, especially if you're videotaping or you're telling on a person whose life is basically at jeopardy. You know, you make a person desperate, and you don't want to be in front of a desperate person trying to, save themselves.
I think, that show To Catch Predator, remember? I think it was canceled because the fact that they caught this man talking to a kid, and that man was something with like a governor or something. I'm not really sure, a board member or something.
Oh, snap.
And they ended up like confronting him, and he went back home and took his life.
Oh, snap.
That's the reason that they canceled the show.
Yeah, see, if you have an idea that those things are going on, it's better left to report those things versus trying to take those things into your own hands. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. So, hey, when it comes down to the IGG rank that you said that the defense was trying to, make sure that they brought it in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they're trying to bring it in that way they can put more spotlight on the other two unknown DNAs?
No, because they're not related. So the unknown, the IGG is just a workup of Bryan Kohberger's family, right? Now, what the defense is arguing is saying that, hey, we don't have the workup for the other two. And the prosecution is saying, basically, they don't have Bryan Kohberger's, much less any other DNA. And I wouldn't be surprised if that DNA wasn't even submitted yet. A lot of folks might have the wrong misconception here. Maybe it's because Law and Order or NCIS or CSI, don't show multiple cases going on at the same time. But there's a lot of crimes that are happening at the same time. Not all of them get the publicity as others, but just because a high profile crime is happening doesn't mean that there's automatically some sort of more resources, and that crime is stopping everywhere else, so that all the resources can be put to one case. Right? That's not realistic. It really isn't. And I say that because a lot of folks think that they see the probable cause affidavit, they see the evidence that they have, and they assume that police had that evidence day one. Like, for instance, the Elantra, they think that, or people assume, or how can I put this? I've seen where people have commented on how, they had the wrong car. And I'm just like, do you think that they had all the evidence and were able to review the evidence day one, day two, or even at the same time? No, there's so much video footage and only so many resources. There's a good chance that they had to piece this thing together over a long period of time, probably weeks, if not longer.
Yeah. But they did a good job in the time frame that they did get all this evidence, though. Because, I mean, 2 months.
Right, exactly. I mean, it wasn't a very long time. A lot of folks think that it was a long time, but it really wasn't, especially for a crime that didn't happen in the presence of view of an officer. And, there wasn't any connection, from between Bryan Kohberger and the victims, to our knowledge, and according to the defense. So, you have somebody allegedly taking the lives of people that are random. So those type of cases are a lot more difficult than when you have a clear suspect. You know what I mean? Obviously. So, but for me, when everybody says, oh, they had him November 29th because WSU found his car November 29th. I don't think they realize, like, people realize that it's not just as simple as like, hey, I got the car, come arrest the guy. Now the guy has to probably alert captain or whatever, and even at that, with so many cars, it's probably all right. Found it, jot it down, right? Call in the license plate number, get the information of the license plate number and the operator, put it amongst all the other ones, because I'm fairly positive that the officer at WSU police department wasn't like, all right, I'm gonna get this list of white Elantras, 22,000 of them or whatever, and I'm gonna go to only Bryan Kohberger's. No. So it was probably in between a list of a lot of information, right? And that information doesn't go just directly to Sergeant Payne. That information goes first to that officer sergeant, then that officer sergeant. It goes from that officer sergeant to their lieutenant, captain, and it has approval through the chain of command, which, like I said, not everything goes and happens in one day. All right. There's a good possibility that if he saw that car on the 29th, that he could have just, and I've seen this happen before, they'll run a license plate, ask dispatch to print it out and put them all together. Then you go pick it up, and then you have your report, you sent it out. It literally it'll probably take, maybe a few days before it actually gets to the Moscow Police Department. And once it arrives there, do you know how many tips they were having at the time, and how limited resources they really had? I know a lot of folks were saying that they had 50 FBI agents and all of ISP, all of Moscow Police Department. They had tens of thousands of tips. They had tens of thousands or thousands of hours of footage to go over. There was 4 victims, 4 victimologies needed to be put in place. They needed to figure out who, why or what happened with the surviving victims, all of that. So it was a lot of work to have been done. Grand juries indicted him. That's true, but that's only one part of the process. Just because you get indicted doesn't mean you're guilty. You still got to go through the other process. So yeah. I just find it unreasonable to think that police had all of the information and had all the evidence, filtered out, and it was just the Bryan Kohberger stuff that they were working on. It's not. So what else do we know about this case that's coming? So since Bryan Kohberger's arrest, what do we know about the evidence? What's the evidence that ties him to this? There's his phone being off during a specific time. That specific time that his phone is off is during the time that the murders are being taken place. We know that a white Elantra that matches or is similar or the same as the one that he drives is seen in the area around the time when the murders occurred. Well, let me rephrase that. It is seen before, when they believe the murders had occurred. It's not seen during the time in which the law enforcement believe that the murders occurred, but is seen after, when they believe that the murders were over. So only that specific time, that while the murders were occurring, that vehicle was not visible, right? Now, we know that this specific time was the time because of a couple of things, right? The downloads from the phones, whether it was Dylan's, Bethany's, Xana's, they have their download. Now, I'm assuming that if and it sounds like that Dylan was asleep and that she was woken up, right? If she texted somebody in the house or checked her phone, that's an indication of what time that this occurred. So you have the phones probably being activated around 4 a.m. as an indicator of when this occurred, based on her statements. You have Xana's phone being operational on TikTok till 4:12. Then you have audio from a Ring camera about 50 feet away that picks up the dog barking, voices, a thud, and other sounds that would be associated with the crime that's taking place. So the time frame in which this crime had occurred is pretty narrowed down. Do you see, Blue, somewhere within that time frame that this crime could have occurred somewhere outside of that time frame?
No, I think the time frame is actually pretty. It's a pretty like identified, I would want to say, because they had the time that the DoorDash dropped off the food, they had the time she got off her TikTok, and then they have the time of the car speeding away from the scene. That puts in a pretty close window.
So one can assume, though, whether we know or not, if Bryan Kohberger was the sole occupant or occupant at all in that white Elantra, do you think police and law enforcement can safely say that they think that white Elantra is involved based on its activity from what they see in the footage?
Yeah, like, first of all, when they say it fled the scene at a high rate speed, I mean, anybody know a college town, you don't want to speed anywhere around there because you're going to get it. If you've been drinking, pulled over because they're looking for DWI. They're looking for people that have been drinking. So he took a risk taking off at that speed.
Yeah. And Mary, the time of death has been verified. I've spoken to the mother of a victim who has told me the verified time of death from autopsy. And it has been verified that the crime could not have happened before 3:45 a.m. So I think the window was that the police had given was 4 to 4:30, but the time of death on I think the coroner had given was somewhere around 3:45 to 4:45 or 5, and then the autopsy was like between 4 and 4:30 a.m. So yeah, it has been. And speaking of speaking with Kaylee Goncalves, I spoke with her yesterday, and we had a brief conversation. We're talking about other things that are going on currently, but I had asked her something that I wanted to get cleared up, and that was, a lot of folks were saying that there was a video of Maddie and Kaylee walking Murphy outside after they came back home from the grub truck. Well, I heard the interview where Olivia had said that she would have thought that Kaylee would have taken out her dog, not that she had seen Kaylee taking out her dog. All right, there's a big difference there, right? Yeah, I'll read exactly what the words were. Olivia never saw Kaylee or Maddie take Murphy out on any camera. It did not happen. Nope, not true. There it is. So I know there's a lot of theories out there. There's somebody said that they took the dogs out, and while they were out there, they saw a masked man somewhere. Nope, not true at all. 100% false. So when you hear this narrative from certain creators that are saying that that's the case, even though I'll be honest with you, even though that on certain ones I have informed them that wasn't the case, they continue with that narrative. You guys will now be informed that it never happened. And if you think it did, please send me the video. I'd love to be wrong.
Yeah, it's an long list of people that put out false information.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too long of a list, but that one we can definitely say is not true. And what we also know, and this is from my previous conversation with her, is that Jack DeCour had woken up by his roommates the day of the incident and that police were already there. We know that, speaking with Kaylee Goncalves, that her call, the first call to inform her that there was an incident, happened at 1:32 p.m. and that she called Jack DeCour at that time. And at that time, he didn't answer. She told me the reason why he didn't answer was because he woke up. He had gone over to the victim's house because there was officers there. He identified who he was, and he was asked to, or was taken to the police department for questioning immediately right then and there. So we know that had to have happened between 12 and 1:30. Right. We know that they forensically downloaded his phone, searched him, searched his body. They took his phone away, I think, for a few days. And then go ahead, Holly, ask the question, put a couple of stars, and then I'll be able to, we'll see it. And Dreamer, I know you saw the interview. Send me the link. Send me the link. Because it's I've seen it too. And what Olivia said was that she thought Kaylee would have, not that she did. And that's where everybody's getting it all confused. It's insane and laughable. Half of these things BK fans are coming up with, ridiculous. You know, I want to be honest with you guys about something. So the other day, because I was getting so much crap, like just crap in my emails and this and that, and all these things about, no, this is how it happened, and this is what happened, and this creator said this, and this creator said that. And I was like, they were telling me that the PCA isn't credible, is not credible. The PCA is not credible. It's lies. But that user 1234 on Twitter, on Reddit, on 4chan, now they got the real information. They said that they were somebody that. So I went on my little burner account, went to a channel. I'm not going to say which one it is. Went to their comment section and was just spewing out things that are just so unbelievable. You know, I said, what did I say? I said I was part of Bryan Kohberger. I'm close to Bryan Kohberger's defense team, and Bryan Kohberger does indeed have a brother, like stuff like that. And you know, I had people telling me, "Hey, don't get his case ruined by talking, you know, being part of his defense team." And I'm like, you seriously think that this person saying these things like Bryan Kohberger has a brother, or what else did I say? That the reason why Bryan Kohberger doesn't have an alibi and his phone was off is because he was abducted by aliens during that time, and there's no service out in space. And people believe it. People believe it. Like, I was shocked at how much people were believing. They would believe that over anything else. So be aware. There are some roles in the BK pro BK stuff as well. And that was the first time and the only time I've done it. And I'm not planning on doing it again. I was doing it to see how gullible some things can be, right? Because I get a bunch of crap. Like, oh man, you know, you guys put out a clickbaity thumbnail or title. And I'm like, are you guys the title police on these pro BK, you know, channels that are flat lying in their thumbnails? But sometimes you got to play dirty and fight fire with fire. Right, Big Blue?
Yeah, just remember, aliens don't come from the sky, they come from the ground. They're ants.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's a new theory from Joe Rogan's show. So Everybody does it, but
yeah, and it wasn't any, it wasn't on a channel or anything of somebody that's been on our channel. It was just somebody completely random. I got a message and a couple of emails about certain things that were being said on certain channels, and I was like, you guys will believe anything. If I go and say that I'm part of the defense, you believe it. If I go and say that I'm Bryan Kohberger's cousin, you believe it. But if a cop comes out here and says we got DNA on a sheath underneath the body of a victim, oh wait, whoa, that's not believable. It's not believable. Make it make sense, Blue. Make it make sense. I come from the water.
I think we'll ever make it make sense, man. There's gonna be a left hand to every right, you know. Well, unless, unless the right hand got chopped off somewhere.
Yeah, and you know, it's. Go ahead.
So in most, proportionate people, there's a left hand to the right.
Yeah, and you know what's funny though? I didn't notice it until after I had done it. In the comment section, I had said, "Hey y'all, did y'all know this?" And I realized, man, I use my Texas talk. Hey y'all, I was like, I'm gonna give myself away. That's when you know I'm not good at this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I wanted to just kind of do a little bit of an experiment. You know, see how much some of these things were believable, and good golly almighty, you would be surprised. Well, maybe I'm not. I don't know, but it is what it is. So, what else do we know, Big Blue? Before we call it a show. What is the evidence? That's what we're talking about. What is the evidence that they have against Kohberger? They have his DNA on a sheath that is underneath the body of a victim.
His phone pings.
They have his phone pings. They have his phone off during a specific time, during the time of the murders.
And the prosecution will bring up his mental status. They'll bring up his history. Not being able to work with, because to us it's hearsay, but we assume that he doesn't like being, told what to do by females. His TA position falling apart, all that mindset they're going to use all that to give the jury a good idea of what his thought process could be at that time, because people get desperate during those times.
Yeah, you're right. Art Reese comes in with a 199 super chat, says it seems like some creators have a problem with police. I mean, I'm never one, or I don't want to get into like how somebody should run their own channel and stuff like that, but when it comes to this type of stuff, I'll be honest. I mean, it does kind of get to me, especially when somebody is clearly taking things out of context or editing things in a way that, like, for instance, one thing I had seen was on a different channel was when it came to the two S&P profiles. I had seen where a creator had was recording Bill Thompson talking about it and stopping it right before he explains why there was two, and then reiterating things that aren't true. Now, is it because, they I don't know. Is it because they want clicks, views, money? They want attention? I don't know. Or are they that ignorant to not know the difference? Maybe. I don't know. And I'm not pointing at any specific creator whatsoever or anything like that. I just like some of that stuff. Like I said, yesterday I was talking with Christy and they were having she was kind of talking about some of those things that are out there like that and how it kind of gets to her. And I'll be honest, it does to me as well, just because these are real people. It's fun to have your ideas and your theories. If it's, if we're talking about quantum leap and we're talking about, some other show, Law and Order, you know what I mean? But these are real people with real feelings, and they're going through a
Yeah.
tough time right now because
I was gonna say there's good and bad people in every position or every part of our lives. You know what I mean? There's good and bad police officers. I can admit that. There's good and bad doctors. I can admit that. There's good and bad nurses. Definitely can admit that because I've seen it. You know, but there's good and bad restaurant workers. There's good and bad custodians. Good and bad teachers. Good and bad presidents. So no matter what you do, there's always a good or bad person in our life.
Kaylee says corruption in Moscow way before the event took place. Yeah, but was it really Moscow that solved this case, or was it the FBI? Let's be real. It's the FBI. And do you think that the FBI officers are going to, I don't know, cover up for some small town crooked cop somewhere in a town that nobody knows on a big high profile murder that, I don't know, could affect things if they got things right? Maybe their career could go somewhere. I don't know. I don't think that they're going to put this small town crooked cop above themselves. It doesn't make sense. It makes less sense than, you know, the folks that say, oh, Bryan Kohberger was a PhD student. You know, PhD student couldn't have committed this crime. You know, why would he throw his life away? Same thing can be said about the FBI agents. Why would they throw their life away? Because if they knew that something was corrupt or they found something shady in the investigation and just kind of turned their backs away, that's not only a fireable offense, but that's a criminal offense that they can go to jail for. And I'll tell you what, I don't think jail is a very nice place to people that were in law enforcement at one time. So it's a lot of risk. It's a lot of risk. Yeah. But so back to the evidence. They got the DNA. They also have the camera of his car. They have his phone pings. You know, we find out later they have a receipt for a K-bar knife that he purchased in April of 2022. The same time that he is, you know, applying for a job with the Pullman Police Department as an intern. What do you think about that coincidence there, Big Blue? Now, let me add this too. We know that he applied in the fall, and Pullman Police Department has confirmed that he did not get selected in the fall either. So if he applied in the fall, we can assume then he didn't get the job in the spring, right?
That's what we can assume. I mean, sometimes they change their mind or they were full, but I haven't seen the letter for the spring yet.
Right.
Okay.
I was just going to say that I don't think there was a letter put out. It was a statement that was put out.
Okay. And then for the K-bar knife, that's pretty damning because, I mean, even though they do sell a lot of those knives, but for him to own one is pretty, you know.
And it can't be found. It's not just that they own it's missing.
Yeah.
What are the chances of that?
Yeah, it's a big coincidence.
And they got tags and a receipt for Dickie's work clothing. Those can't be found either.
Yeah.
You know, what some weird. So you have those things. What else do we have about Kohberger? Oh, he was getting fired from his TA job during this time as well. And why was he getting fired? He was having arguments with teachers, and he was having some issues with students. Some of it was just his grading. However, there were some PhD students who found his behavior to be so disturbing, especially towards another female PhD student, that they began to document his behavior habits. Like, what does that tell you, Big Blue? If somebody documents your behavior patterns,
that means it's pretty alarming, man. Because for them to do that, like, it went past the okay threshold. You know what I mean? Like, something happened that they noticed, like, hey, this guy's kind of weird. We have to keep an eye on him. Because you normally don't do that with people. Normally, the time you brush it off, this guy's weird, and then that's it. But to keep track of it, it means it's happened more than once.
Right. And then it begs to wonder if these PhD students were starting off this behavior. And this started happening very early. I mean, school started when in September. By the end of September, he was having problems. Or let's just say it was August. So within a month, he was having problems to the point where they were documenting his behavior. And the behavior was that he was asking out a specific girl multiple times. And then he was asking females to meet him in his office late at night. And he would close the door behind him, even though there was policy against that. He had I think it was a verbal argument and then a physical altercation with one of his professors. He doesn't sound very stable to me.
That's what the prosecution's gonna have to, talk to the jury about. I mean, that's one of the tactics that they do. They're not gonna paint you as the nicest guy in the world. Because, if you have a history and it's documented, I mean, it is documented somewhere that they put him on a probation for his work because his work wasn't up to par. And I'm pretty sure they investigated or talked to the professor. And I'm pretty sure there might be a document somewhere in all the documents, the professor's statement saying, yeah, he was combative with me. Maybe I never read the part where he got in a fight with him I know he got into arguments with him. Never the fight. So maybe, if it's in the professor's confession, and it holds more weight towards his, anger and demeanor that they're trying to push. And they're not even pushing that right now.
Right.
They're not even pushing that. They're using the strict, facts. But you add all that with the facts, it's pretty damning.
Yeah. And so, Holly, I know you were asking a question earlier. That's why I brought this up. I didn't see it. If you could ask it again, that'd be great. I missed it. My chat was jumping up and down. And so, yeah, no, you're right, Blue. And, the one thing that I guess people are also forgetting is while Kohberger was in DeSales University, because they're going to say, hey, Kohberger was, one of only 2 students recommended for the PhD class, or yada, 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 right? But what people fail to notice or know is that all happened during 2020 and 2021. That's when COVID was at its heights and virtual classes were pretty much the norm. So, yeah, he did well. But where he wasn't doing well at during that time? His job as a security officer. Apparently, a resignation letter has been surfaced from Bryan Kohberger. He was working as a security officer at the school that he went to high school with, which is kind of weird because they hired him as a security officer, probably because of his parents. I think his parents work in the school district. But he was kicked out of the law enforcement program in high school because of some behavioral thing, right? So he ends up going back and becoming a security guard. He ends up resigning, and on his resignation letter, there's a part there that he had signed where it said, "Now I understand that if I don't resign, I could be terminated." So all that basically means is it was quit or you're fired kind of thing. They don't do that just for no reason, right, Big Blue?
I mean, I've never been handed one of the letters, so I don't know. I've always had the pleasure of saying, "Here's my 2 weeks," or "Have a nice day," and then I just walk out.
Let me. Do you see Holly's question by any chance? I'm not sure if she put it back on there. But I saw something right here. Ooh, I saw on a YouTube channel that was a party at the house behind the house. So that came from a lady claiming that she was 21 years old and Dylan Mortenson's friend. And when she went live somewhere, she accidentally turned on the camera and she ended up being like 40 something, or at least looking like she was 40 something. Nothing to do with the case. And this is the thing that I kind of warn you guys when, they think some of the pro burgers, I'm gonna call them pro-burgers, not crow, they're pro-burgers. The pro-burgers will look at Dot and say that information is credible. And then even when it comes to light that this person isn't a 21-year-old University of Idaho student who was friends with some of the residents, that this is a 40-year-old, 45-year-old troll from TikTok. Do you know what they still say? She might be not who she says she is, but the information could still be accurate. I mean, you could slap these people in the face with a 40-year-old person claiming to be 21 and they don't see it. Like,
Yeah. Man, but
I'm not being biased.
That happens in all cases. I mean, it happens in a lot of cases
and
where
I do want to say this. When I mean by like the pro burgers, I'm talking about those who, like, there's nothing wrong with having an opinion or even thinking that this guy is not guilty. I find the folks that are the trolls that are in the comment section that are, no matter what, anybody could have done this. The damn chief of police. I think that was actually an argument. The chief of police could have done this, but Bryan Kohberger couldn't. That's who I'm referring to. I'm referring to those certain people because just thinking that he's innocent or there's not enough evidence, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having a different opinion. But it's when, like, you know, there's a 40-year-old person, their face is in the camera. You can tell they're lying to you, and yet spew that information as if it's fact. That's what I'm talking about. Does that make sense, Blue?
sorry, I was trying to bring up a comment and it jumped up. So yeah, I'm with you. Where'd it go? So you coined the phrase "pro burger."
Oh yeah, pro burgers. That's what we're gonna call it. It's not Kohberger, it's pro burgers. And like I said, it's not just those that think he might be innocent or want to wait to trial. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, like I said, I'm not coming up here saying that this guy's 100% guilty. There's no need for court. Take him out behind the barn and take him out. Nowhere have I ever said that. And I've never once said that I think that he's 100% guilty. I have said that I want to see, all the evidence. I do think that based on the evidence that's there, it'd be very difficult for it not to be him. The story that would have to be made for it not to be him is very wild and, for me, unbelievable. But, some people want to see all the evidence. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the Dot situation that I'm referring to. And there was some content creators who were talking about Dot. And when they found out that she was not who she said she was, they jumped off of it. They, in fact, pointed it out. Right? Even though they, were more on the side of Kohberger being innocent, they questioned this 40-year-old person. And when the truth came out, it came out. And, kudos to them. I'm not referring to them in any way. It's the ones that say, yeah, she may not be real, but the information she has is real. And the information PCA is fake. That's what I'm referring to. People need to stop putting out conspiracies. Tim Allen 199. Yeah, I would agree. I do. At this point,
we agree, but we can't stop people saying what they're saying. In the same way, some people might not like us saying what we're saying either. And it's, like last week we covered a case that was pretty tough, and the victims' families didn't want the information we covered to be covered. So we get it, man. It's a hard choice that sometimes we have to make.
Law enforcement said early on to only pay attention to what they put out as the only credible information. People need to wait until trial for correct information to come up. And that's true. And one of the reasons why law enforcement said that is because they probably knew that they were putting out inaccurate information. So what do we know about the case is that physically the evidence that was there, they probably didn't have much, especially if they had to rely on an IGG makeup report to if they had to rely on that then that tells me that, they didn't have much on him or anything like that. So, if somebody were to come in and just say, hey, I committed this crime, I confess. If there wasn't, something that, like, for instance, in the Richard Allen case, there was sticks on the bodies. There was, they were laid out in a specific place, right? They were staged. The bodies were staged. In that situation, if somebody goes in there and says, I committed this crime, one of the questions is like, all right, how did you commit it? And what did you do? What did you do with the bodies? And if their information isn't accurate or doesn't line up with the scene, then that's false confession. In this case, what I'm assuming is there wasn't probably something like that they could lean on. So what they were leaning on is time, that this occurred between 4 and 4:30. So they tell people that it occurred between 3 and 3:30 or whatever. And what that does is, one, if you're out and about at 4, you're probably out and about at 3:30, 3:15, 3:50. 3:50. So you would assume that if somebody came forward saying they were out at that time and around that area, then it's probably the same person. But if somebody comes forward and says, hey, I committed this crime, they said, all right, what time did you get there? I got there at 3:15. I left 3:45. All right. Well, that guy's lying because it happened at 4, right? So that's probably why the information came out that way, and why they themselves even said that some of the information may not be accurate, because they weren't even giving accurate information. I'm still baffled at the amount of money the state is giving to a public defender. Yeah. But go ahead, Blue.
It's a high profile case. I even remember when this first happened, the state gave like over $100,000 to help to keep the FBI and the case going. So they're invested already.
Yeah, they did. And the thing is, you have to give this guy his fair trial. You have to give him every opportunity to defend himself. That's part of the system. I believe that in most cases, not in all, there's nothing 100% accurate, but in most cases, the system works out right. You do have some situations where it doesn't. All right. But for the most part, it does. And, I don't know. I'll leave it at that.
But it's a DP case. Yeah.
It is. And, with it being a DP case, that's probably why a lot of the information is wanting to be kept close to the vest, so to speak. Oh, there you go. Sissy says $5 super chat. Thank you, Sissy. Daniel, I was looking for it. I've been looking for that question. Holly wants to know if the black jacket by the fire hydrant was Kaylee's. I'll ask Christy. I don't think so, to be honest with you. But I'll ask Christy that if there's any truth to that. Let me write that down. Black jacket. I'm not going to ask her today. Today's not a day that I want to interrupt her and what her family are doing. Maybe not even tomorrow.
Thoughts and prayers go out to them. It's going to be a tough, week, month. Holidays are just around the corner, and they're missing a loved one at their table this season. So it's one of those things where thoughts and prayers go out to them.
Yeah, 100%, man. It's just sad. It should have never happened. Holly says, in my opinion, he is guilty in my book. I will judge. I see what's right in front of us. You have that right too. Nobody should feel bad about their opinion. If you think he's 100% guilty, you think he's 100% guilty. If you think he's 100% innocent, that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't know. I guess for me, I think he did it, but yet I can point out things and be factual and unbiased about it. Like, for instance, the fact that I think that they didn't have Bryan Kohberger's car or the year car until they had his name. That doesn't really work out for the prosecution, but it doesn't change the fact that that's true, right? At the end of the day, it is what it is. I try to keep everything 100. I keep it a buck. If it if it works in favor of my opinion or not doesn't hold weight to me. Like, for instance, the Richard Allen case. I thought that guy was it. It was him. It was him by himself. Probable cause affidavit came out. I read that. Thought it was him by himself. Blue, you too, right?
Yeah, I did. And then until the recent information, I'm like, getting me thinking.
It makes you think. Yeah, exactly. It makes you think, makes you wonder. And for me, I don't know. Now, if I was biased or whatever, I would look at the information and say, nah, it don't mean shit. The guy's guilty as hell. So just because I don't agree with your opinion doesn't mean I don't know, that I'm wrong. This is a discussion, not a jury.
Yeah, everybody's gonna have their opinion, their reasoning to do what they do, and it's part of being a conscious person. You make your own decisions.
So, grow up, Drunk Turkey. Oh, we need to grow up. MPD is already in trouble for past corruption, right? There is everything to think the MPD is corrupt. So then why doesn't everybody in Moscow just get away with everything because somebody did something once corrupt? Like, oh, they did something once corrupt. So that means every crime that has been committed in there, it's just let go of all the criminals. Open up the prison. Let them out. In fact, if one officer is corrupt in the United States of America, then all officers are corrupt, right? That's the point of view there. That's the thought. Then let out all the criminals, and we'll see how quickly people would be complaining about that.
I'm gonna say there could be a corrupt one. It could be, but normally nowadays, man, there's zero tolerance for that kind of stuff.
It's hard, dude.
They clean house. I mean, I've seen it in a town near here where it was corrupt for a while. They clean house. They got rid of the police department. It's a sheriff department that takes care of that town now. So if it was that bad, I'm pretty sure the Indiana State Police would be involved because they have a lot more moral rights to take care of the people than.
That's the thing, though. I think it was an Idaho State Police officer, Coleman or something like that, who was accused of something, and they lied about evidence. It was a murder trial or something like that. But I get it. But my question is, what was that person's involvement in this case? Because the only thing that I've seen in that person's involvement was that they were assisting with tips, like anybody's tips. Like, for instance, if I called in a tip and said, hey, somebody called me and said that this was something happened, and they called the show. Well, I would be assigned an officer to take that tip. Now, do you think that the officer that is taking my tip is really anything to do with the investigation if their duties is to collect tips? It's not. Their primary duty is not the investigation, right? So, and then again, as I mentioned before, it really wasn't Moscow Police Department that solved this case. Again, if I was biased, I would say it was Moscow PD. They did a great job. It wasn't Moscow PD. It was the FBI. Keep it 100 or keep it a buck. The FBI is who figured out who this guy was, right? Moscow PD built the case against him and built one that was legal, but it was the FBI who figured it out. What do you think, Blue?
Yeah, I think they worked together and they left it for the police department to build a case against him. So I think, they did a good time frame in the job wise. They got somebody within 2 months instead of 2 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the FBI did the IGG. They got his name. They identified the vehicle as being a 2014 16. They also identified it as an 11 or 13 Elantra. They're the ones that did the locations on his phones for the 12 times that he was in the area where the victims lived. What really did Moscow do outside of, once they got his name, we're like, all right, let's pull up the interwebs and look at this guy. Oh, he's a criminologist, PhD student. Oh, look at this Reddit post he has over here talking some weird stuff about emotions during the commission of crime. You know what I mean? So once they looked into him, that's when it was, all right, things started to happen. Things started to fall in place, and they started to fall in place quickly. You know, there's a lot of like boxes that need to be checked. And, you know, I want to say that BK pretty much check marks all of them. You know, was he up and around during the time of the murder? Yeah, check mark. Was his phone at the residence or off during the crime to elude the investigation? Check mark. Does he drive a white Elantra? Check mark. Is he about 6 foot? Check mark. With bushy eyebrows? Check mark. Is his DNA at the scene? Check mark. Know what I mean?
There's too many coincidences for it not to be him or to be an accomplice. But for him to be the fifth and not want to say anything to me, you know, leads more to he's hiding something.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're not guilty till you know you go through trial, and then we'll see what the your peers find you as.
Right. And you're right. I mean, you're not guilty. There's court for a reason, right? Just because somebody's arrested, just because somebody's indicted, doesn't mean that they're guilty of the crime, right? They have to be found guilty by a group of their peers, 12 members usually. And that hasn't happened yet. Now, today's age, a lot more information comes out about things. And not only that, there's a lot more technology. So evidence is what do you call it? It's easier to collect. It's more damning. Like hell, they just last year they found out who the Zodiac killer was because of DNA that he left behind, and they did IGG or something like that on him too.
Yeah, that's crazy. But they found him.
C. Vanderhoof, member for 7 months. Thank you. Says, who, in your opinion, was saying, "I am here to help," and why? I don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, it could be something sadistic from the killer. You know, if he did idolize BTK, you know, the T in that BTK was torture. So I don't know if maybe perhaps he thought he had time, because my theory is he went up to the 3rd floor. He committed the crime up there, and he heard somebody yell downstairs. Whether it be Dylan saying to be quiet. And as he came downstairs, I think that Xana had already come out, maybe perhaps after Dylan yelled, and also because it's, to my understanding, that the rear sliding glass door was opened once and only opened, never closed again. So there's probably a draft going on. Right? She walks out, she sees the sliding glass door open, turns around to go call Ethan, who's asleep, who's her boyfriend. She walks back to her bedroom. So remember, her dad just changed the locks, and they automatically lock on her bedroom. So the door couldn't have been closed when BK entered. So either they left their door open, or as Xana was entering the door, which I'm assuming it was Xana, so was Kohberger behind her, or allegedly Kohberger behind her, with her not knowing. Which would make sense as to why there's no DNA under the victim's nails, right? And the reason we can say there's no DNA under the victim's nails is because the DNA that they utilized to arrest Kohberger was only the DNA on the sheath, unless there was a mixture. And the only reason they used the DNA on the sheath was because it was single source. But I don't know. I don't think so. If there was DNA under the nails, that's pretty damning, right? You can't say, "Oh, I touched an item, and that's how my massive amount of skin cells ended up under somebody's fingernails that died from a knife wound," right, Blue?
Yeah, because for the skin to get into the fingernails is pretty tough. I mean, they would have to have in really close contact to you.
Right. Well, I mean, it says something. Like if this person was dying and there's nails or skin cells under their fingernails, that means that they fought back.
Yeah,
and you would assume that if they were fighting back and they scratched the person that was killing them, so that is the DNA of the suspect. So that DNA would be the first DNA that they would have used, right? And the fact that they used the DNA on the sheet tells me there was no other DNA there, right? And if there was no other DNA there, and there's a ring camera that doesn't have sounds of screaming or fighting, that leads me to believe that all of these victims were taken by surprise.
Yeah, I would say it was more of a surprise, because there's no trails leading anywhere. Like, you know, if he was trying to cover the scene somewhere, you know, of putting somebody in a room, there would have been trails of him carrying or dragging somebody to the door. So I think this was a surprise, but that's for another night. You know, like tonight, you know, we just want to say, you know, thoughts and prayers go out to the families. I know today is a tough day.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Our thoughts and prayers do definitely go out to the families. It's unfortunate, and you know, there's no time or there's no indication of when court will resume. There's a lot more stuff that's going on. You know, last thing I'll say on that is I think it's a tactic, you know, and they're wanting to prolong this case. I think that if you look at certain, I guess, I mean, if you just look at views, I don't know what that means or not, but you know, the Kohberger didn't do this is gaining, you know, traction, and not because there's evidence saying that he's innocent, but because certain persons are looking at evidence in a certain light that there's no way we could possibly know if it's one way or another without going to court and looking at everything, right? And that drama, that sensationalism is what ends up grasping the attention of people. And I think that the defense teams know that's what attracts. You know, at first it was, oh man, you know, there was a horrible incident that occurred. You know, let's find this guy. And since the arrest, it was, all right, you know, this guy did it. And then as nothing has come out and people just continue to talk about it, it somehow has changed to the point where even people are blaming victims' family members. It's disgusting. But, you know, I think that that's gaining some traction, and I think that the defense is seeing that. And, you know, if they're seeing something like that, why rush it? And then there's the other aspect too, the house. The house was supposed to be knocked down it's supposed to be knocked down at the end of the semester. They were only keeping it up this semester because court was supposed to happen in October. Yeah. You know, is it possible that they're forcing this to be prolonged because eventually that house is going to be knocked down, and if trial takes too long to occur, then he can kind of ensure that house is knocked down by then? I mean, there's some benefits for this. I mean, he's sitting behind bars, and you know, a lot of people say, you know, he's innocent, he wouldn't want to spend an extra hour there. Well, if it helps your case, I guess you would. What do you think, Blue? And give us some final words so we can let everybody go.
Yeah, I mean, if it's just the way the system works, I want to say, because I've seen a lot of cases people spend years and then they get, you know, the case overturned because the evidence didn't point to them. The DNA pointed to somebody else, but to me in this one, the DNA points to him. So I don't see that kind of flip on this one. We'll see.
Yeah. I want to thank everybody that joined us tonight. We'll be back out on Wednesday unless something else breaks between here there. On Wednesday, we're going to have Anthony Greeno from True Crime Investigates. He is a former resident of Delphi, Indiana, and he's been investigating the Libby and Abby case, the Delphi murders, the Richard Allen double homicide case for the last 5-6 years. He's got some great insight on the case. We'll be bringing him up. He has a video of the map, area, and time frame of the timeline of when the double homicide had occurred and how it really nails it down to Richard Allen. We're gonna have a great conversation with him. Make sure you catch it. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell. With that being said, we're out of here, guys. We'll see you next time.
Good night. Take care.